This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today started at a young age of 25. He was living what many would perceive to be a successful life. He was earning 7 figures annually in his finance career and was traveling around the world. However, after battling with an overwhelm and substance abuse, he lost it all and hit rock bottom. After attending a life-changing event, he was able to bounce back both financially and spiritually, while achieving sobriety and happiness. Based on what he learned from his upward path to success, he created a roadmap for top earning professionals who are feeling exhausted and powerless to align their mind, body, soul, and finances to achieve ultimate productivity. His mission is to empower individuals across the nation to use their own resilience to make their own comeback story and help reduce the epidemic of overwhelm and substance abuse. Please welcome founder and CEO of Reforge Academy, Joe Rivera.
What's up, Mike? What's up, everyone?
Great to have you on the show today, Joe. We had a great opportunity to speak a couple weeks back, and I got to learn a lot about your story from everything that was just mentioned there in the bio about you and to where you are today. And I think the first thing that I'd like to acknowledge for you and for all of our listeners is the vulnerability to be able to share so much about your past and how that has inspired your growth for the future, and then passing that on to so many others. So I definitely commend you on that for sure.
I appreciate that, man. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It's the only way I know how to give it back, man.
It takes a lot. So yeah, could you help us understand your life cycle that you had there? Because I remember you said, when you and I spoke, I mean, you were like, look, I was a young guy, I was making a ton of money, and then I was making even more money, and then other things started happening in your life. If you could take us maybe back to the beginning of all of that, before even earning 7 figures, because you dealing with addiction and knowing others who have dealt with addiction know that the addiction came in way before the 7 figures. So share a little bit about your upbringing, where you were raised, how you were raised, and some people in your life that played a big role in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in New York, born in Brooklyn, moved to Long Island. I was in a home where it was my mother, my aunts, my grandmother. We all lived, tight-knit, either together or very close together. We always lived in the same vicinity. And I had a great upbringing. And, my mother was my everything. She was my mother, my father, my best friend. I call her the jack of all trades, So I didn't need for anything, right? But I obviously wanted for everything. All kids want for things, right? So I had a good upbringing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you one of those stories of trauma is the reason why I turned to drugs and alcohol. I just started experimenting at a young age. At 14 years old, I had my first drink, smoked my first cigarette. They kind of went hand in hand for me. And then I snowballed into weed at like 15, 16. And I did my first line of cocaine in high school my senior year, man. So I was already, my life was already becoming unmanageable because of drugs and alcohol, but I didn't see it like that. I barely graduated on time. I didn't even walk down with my whole class. I had to graduate like at the end of the summer because partying was more important to me. At that time, I didn't give a fuck about going to school. I just wanted to party. And I remember when I got out of high school, I ended up spending one semester in college. That semester, all I did was party. Never went. I don't even think I went to one class, man. And I ended up dropping out after, within the first semester. And then a couple of years passed by, and I said, let me give college another shot. It's like if something different's going to go on. So I get to this place called Briarcliff, and I see a bunch of fancy cars, and any top of the line car you could think of, Mike, was in that parking lot. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here, man? I got to get involved. I mean, I see all these kids, either their parents are buying them these cars or they're drug dealers. One of the two. It's not, these kids aren't able to afford these kind of cars. So I get inside, I talk to the security guard, and he's like, have you ever been upstairs to the third floor? I said, no, why? What goes on up there? He said, why don't you take a ride up there and see what goes on? So I get into the elevator, the door opens, and I see a bunch of guys running around with, $5,000-$10,000 suits on, $25,000 watches on, beautiful women in like each corner of the office, sitting at desks. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, man? I got to get involved. So I asked one of the guys, I called him, I said, what's going on here, man? I want in. He said, we're a brokerage firm. I said, all right, so what do I got to do to get involved? Do I got to finish college? He said, no. I said, sign me up. So I went, I took my Series 7, and it was my first experience also of how important it is to keep pushing and how powerful our vision is, because I failed my Series 7 the first 2 times, but I had a vision and I had in my mind locked in that I wanted what I saw at these firms. What these brokers had, I wanted to get involved. I wanted that. There was nothing that was going to stop me from doing that. So I failed the first time, failed the second time by one question, 69.6. You needed a 70 to pass. I was like, I'm devastated. But I pushed through. I passed it. And I ended up becoming a top producer broker. Listen, man, my life, I went from Park Avenue to Park Bench. I was emotionally, financially, and spiritually bankrupt. I lost everything. I even almost lost my life. I had my dream job in the financial industry as a stockbroker. 25 years old, making 7 figures a year, bro. I thought I was on top of the world. I'm working late nights at the office one evening, and someone approaches me, and they say to me, hey, Joe, you think you're a top producer now? Take this little round pill, and you're going to produce even more. I was already smoking weed, drinking, or having some kind of mood-altering substance in my body every single day for the past 10 years at this point. So I said, why not? It's just one little pill. What's that going to do? And that's when I got introduced to opiates. And that's when my battle with substance abuse took off to the next level. My mom passed, and I told you how tight we were. And my life went dark and became completely unmanageable. I was risking my life every single day. I overdosed twice. The last time, it took 6 cans of Narcan to bring me back to life. 6 fucking cans of Narcan, man. That same night, I'm laying in the hospital bed. I wake up. I pull the EKG electrodes off my body, leave the hospital against medical advice. And then when I get outside, I'm shivering, looking like a crackhead, like Pookie from New Jack City. And the first thing I do, I go call the dealer again to go get high. Wow, man, talk about feeling powerless over drugs and alcohol. Then came a weekend that changed my life forever. My sister invited me for an event. At that event, something clicked. I looked at my sister, she looked at me, and we both started crying. She knew exactly what I was going to say. And then the words came out. The words my family was waiting to hear for years. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm a shell of my true self. I was tired of writing my obituary. I wanted to begin creating my own legacy. After that, I made the decision to achieve sobriety. I mean, my story is not unique, right? Many people struggle with vices that create character defects. Mine was drugs and alcohol.
Mm.
Someone else might be gambling, socks, sex, shopping, overeating, whatever that vice is. It interferes with us being our true self by having us isolate, not being fully present. It creates character defects. For some, I mean, life may become unmanageable. Some people lose motivation and their self-esteem. I promise you, though, man, you don't have to live like that. There's a better way to live life. I mean, it took me nearly a decade to regain control of the steering wheel of my life. Over the years, I had a lot of coaches, did a lot of self-help programs. Some worked, some have not worked out. However, I put together some powerful strategies that have helped me build the foundation to create my own destiny. Mike, man, I believe once we overcome those vices and remove those character defects, that's when we begin to start living in purpose and closing the gap between spirituality and true wealth. Because I used to live an unmanageable life where I lacked direction, didn't finish things that I started. I couldn't get out of my own way, man. Now I live an incredible life where I know the direction I'm going. I know what my goals are. And when I start something, I finish it. And I shatter those goals. But it's all because I have a reliable, repeatable, transformational system that I live by that helped me create wealth financially, emotionally, and spiritually, man. And it's truly a blessing.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack in terms of that story there, and I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. And I think, what's really nice about being able to share all of that in such like a nice condensed way for all of us is that right here, right in the beginning of this podcast, everybody knows what we're going to be talking about, and everybody can tell how real you are and how emotional it is as well to work through all of this. I think, in my podcast and our audience here, we have entrepreneurs who are listening, we have business leaders who are listening, and everybody struggles with anything, with some sort of stress in their life and finds different outlets for it, as you had mentioned earlier on. And of course, there's addiction is rampant across our nation, across our world. So I hope that whoever's listening, if this resonates with you, if Joe's story resonates with you, that you stay on, because we're going to break down some of the things that he's experienced and some of the things that he's talked about here. I'm going to go back kind of like in some sort of timeline order here as we work through some of this. I want to go back to senior year, where you said, that was the first time you got into cocaine and you were partying all the time, and partying was more important. When you were living in that life and in that world of partying, of being around those types of people, what I'm interested in terms of this is you have a strong family support system, what it sounds like from what you just shared from your mom and that relationship, your sister, your family. During that time of partying, were you living a dual life? Like, were you living a life where you were one person with your friends partying and doing drugs and hanging out, and then when you were coming home, being with mom and being with your family, were you living a separate life from them?
I mean, yeah, in the beginning,
right.
I was definitely living a separate life, especially when I was younger. I wasn't able to drink in front of them. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, so I was definitely living another life. I mean, the lies that I told my siblings, I mean, I put my family through hell, man. I remember me and my brother, I mean, we were really close. We are really close. And man, he used to like follow me around to see if I'm doing shit and if I'm getting high, and he hated it, And I put him through hell. I mean, we would go at this story. We were out in a bar or whatever when we were a little older than my senior year, and he's like banging on the bathroom door to see what I'm doing in there. I'm all jammed up. I can't even open the door. I mean, it's just like, so yeah, it was definitely the double life to the fullest. You know what I mean? Of trying to hide it from my family. Mm-hmm. Because as I got a little bit older, the drinking was, a little more acceptable, right?
Sure.
I'm older than 21. I'm able to drink. But the drugs, nah, man, that shit was on the low for forever. But the thing is, the alcohol to me, alcohol is a drug, and it led to, me going into the harder stuff
Right.
because it ran hand in hand.
Yep. And so what I'm asking too about in terms of this is like the relationships in your life and how it affected them obviously in a negative way, but obviously you talk about your siblings now and your mom has since passed, but I'm sure you mended ways with her too. How did you mend those ways with those relationships? How did you find a way to be able to restore what you once had with them?
Time, trust was built again. Look, the relationships were never broken to a point where I got kicked out of the house or they stopped talking to me. And I got family's one of my is other than spirituality, family's my number one core value, and it really came from my upbringing. We were always tight, always close, always had each other's back, always will have each other's back, and be there for each other through thick and thin. No matter what we go through, we're always there for each other. So they were very supportive of me throughout my journey, and trying to help me out, trying to get, telling me that I got to stop, telling me I got to slow down. But when I'm in my 20s making 7 figures a year, I'm thinking I'm on top of the world. Why should I have to stop? Because you're telling me I got to stop. I'm doing what I got to do. I'm making all this money. I'm taking care of my mom. I'm paying the bill. It kept going down a path of life becoming more and more manageable. Other people are seeing it, but I wasn't seeing it like that, man.
Sure. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying so relationships got broken in that way of like trust, but it was never to a point of like abandonment and they left me behind or anything like that.
And could you share with us a little bit about when you were saying life became unmanageable? What did that look like? What did unmanageable mean? Because like you just said, you were holding down a job, you were making money, you were paying bills. Most of us would say it sounds like you're managing life just fine. What was unmanageable?
Becoming overwhelmed. The overwhelm became unmanageable, not knowing how to handle it, having to turn to drugs and alcohol to deal with to deal with that overwhelmness. It became to have lack of clarity, lack of direction in life, of a way to live life. Because then eventually what happened, is then the bills slow down on getting paid, right? Because I'm focusing more on not only the bills getting slowed down on getting paid as the drug habit got worse, but also I'm focusing more on my business because I want my business to grow. I want to be on top of the world. I want to get to the top, right? So listen, man, 7 figures wasn't enough. I wanted 8 figures, 9 figures. Then I said, all right, yeah, maybe at that point I'll be the best. So I was always wanting more and also not having the work-life balance. There was no balance in my life. It was just go hard or go home, right? And in every aspect. But business came first. The fast life came first. It wasn't about like, let me work this balance out with my family. Let me put the time in. Let me be present. Let me make sure, because I was so focused on getting to the top, on being the best. I didn't put the focus on my overall picture, man.
It's interesting you bring up balance because I'm trying to understand how do you balance, drugs and you talk about opiates now, which are downers, right? And are sucking energy out of you really. And obviously probably have a cocktail of other things happening. How were you able to be mentally coherent to be able to make sales and to grow a 7-figure business? How did that work? How does that work together?
Mindset, man. It really is. And without realizing it, I didn't know what real mindset was back then, but I had such a strong mindset of being successful that even when I'm doing the opiates, I'm doing this and doing the concoctions, of course, it wasn't like I wasn't able to produce. I was still producing, but in my mind, I'm thinking that the drugs and alcohol is the reason why I'm producing. I'm not realizing that I got it within me already.
Wow.
But the drugs and alcohol are making everything else around me messy.
Wow. Yeah, that's such an incredible breakthrough for everyone to hear too, is that like, so many times that happens to so many of us. From a personal experience on my own, I used to dance for a DJ company. I was, go out and get the party going, kind of like mingle with the elderly ladies who are just kind of sitting there, get them up out of their seat. Of course, the younger ones, dance with them, entertain them, and have fun with them. And I started that when I was probably, I think I was around 15, 16 years old and doing Sweet 16s. And, it was a lot of fun and just going out and kind of like dancing with people my own age. And as I got a little bit older, that's when I would start getting the moms and the grandmothers up off their chairs and getting them to dance, right? And I want to say it was like around 17, 18 years old where, you're at catering halls. And by the way, this was in Brooklyn. This was in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. Only because of the story I'm sharing, I'm not going to share the name of the DJ company. But this is at the catering halls that you probably know in Brooklyn. Many of them, and again, I'm not going to go through some of the names, but many of them that I'm talking about because we did all the big catering halls there. But it's easy to get alcohol. When you're doing the catering hall, especially when you're kind of like staffed to some extent, because as the DJs, you're in one of the bridal suites because they're just kind of putting all of you in there, and you're buddy with all the waiters and waitresses and bartenders, and it's easy to get booze. And so we would get booze pretty much sent to the room, sent to the suite. We would get, a tray of rum and Cokes just sent in from the bartender because somebody requested it, threw them a 20, threw them a 50, whatever it was, right? And they sent in a tray. And so we would all drink a couple, like think we're having fun. And to your point, I remember there was a point where this kind of just became our thing. Was like, it was the weekends too. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday that we were doing these parties, and we would drink. And I started thinking that, oh yeah, it's the booze. Like the reason why I'm dancing so well, the reason why everybody's dancing with me is because I'm drinking and I'm drunk essentially, right? I mean, it's not till later in life that I realized that, to your point, the booze didn't make me a better dancer. I had it in me. I was just always a dancer. I was dancing before I ever drank, I was always a dancer. I was always kind of like that entertainer of having fun and going out and grabbing people and being able to be available to them, right? In that sense. It wasn't the booze. And so I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I think so many times we think that we need these other things, and I want you to jump on this because this has to do with a lot of the coaching that you do. So many times we think in life and in business and to be successful, we need all these other things, and sometimes it could be addictive things like alcohol and drugs, but it could also, like you said, be shopping habits. We need the new watch, we need the new suit, we need the new car, and that's what's going to help us get to the next level. That's what's going to help us be more successful. And the truth is, like you just said, is that we really have that within us. I'm interested in like you jumping on this kind of bandwagon here of what you started here is, how do people find that within them? How do they uncover that this is truly their strength and it's not the strength of the opiates, it's not the strength of the shopping habit? How do they find that within them? How do you help your clients find that within them?
It's about removing the blocks, the inner blocks that we have in our life. Right? The inner critic that jumps out at you and tells you you're not good enough. You need this to do that. You need this to do that. When at the end of the day, man, that word need should be eliminated from the vocabulary. The only thing you really need is food and shelter, right? To survive. But other than that, it's wants that you have in your life. So you have to ask yourself, why do you want this drug and alcohol? Why do you want to go shopping? Why do you want and do the analysis of what's it going to do for you? What's it going to do against you, right? It's like breaking down a positive and negative list, right? And finding out what that is. But when you're able to really dig in and start working on those inner blocks, the inner critic, the limited beliefs, and you start removing those from your life, guess what happens? Core values get uncovered. And when those core values get uncovered, that's where the aha moments start beginning. And you start to really realize what's really important to you, and figuring out not just your why, but your what, because the why is important, right? But without the what, that why doesn't get accomplished, right? So finding out what it is that gives you that extra push inside, because your purpose and your passion comes from within, right? And when you start uncovering those limited beliefs, start uncovering those, removing those limited beliefs, I should say, and uncovering those core values, your purpose starts to shape up, and you start to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel of what you're meant to do, because that's the whole point of my program, right? Is to help people be able to really walk and live in their purpose, so that they're able to really close the gap between spirituality and true wealth. Because, man, I mean, there's a big taboo out there of not being able to have spirituality in your life and not being able to have money in your life. And it's such bullshit, right? Because the more spirituality you have in your life, and I'm not talking the religion, right? I'm talking really like spirituality is, yeah, there's a higher power involved. You want to call it God, the infinite intelligence, the universe, whatever you choose. That's important to know, that there's something greater than yourself inside you that helps you remove those blocks, right? And brings you to your greatness, brings you to your purpose. But spirituality is also walking and living in purpose. That's what and you don't have true wealth, because true wealth doesn't mean just money. Like, don't get me wrong, Mike. Don't get me wrong, audience. I'm not saying that money isn't important and money doesn't do anything, because having money is a lot better than not having money. I've lived on both sides, and I can tell you for sure, having money is a lot better than living on the side with no money. But it's not, that doesn't create true wealth, right? Because we've seen it so many times of people who have all this money, and then guess what happens? There's something missing in their life, and they end up being so miserable because they're empty inside. I mean, look at Robin Williams, perfect example. The guy took his life. Michael K. Williams, another actor that had everything, right? But he went back to doing drugs because there was a piece missing. He had a piece of him missing. There was something inside that was missing. Chris Farley, I mean, the list goes on and on of people that have taken their lives, whether it's through substance abuse or committing suicide. I mean, when you die from drugs and alcohol, you're still committing suicide anyway. So the piece that's missing is that spirituality piece. Mm. And when you have that, the true wealth that gets created, you live in an abundant lifestyle, emotionally, financially, and spiritually.
Mm. Yeah, I like that you focus on the what. I think that's really important. I want to talk about your core values in a second, but I want to just go back to what you just said of living on both sides of wealth and obviously not wealth. And I like how you put it with, you went from Park Avenue to Park Bench. How do you rebuild? I mean, so many of us, we feel that we're in a position where, we're living a normal life of whether we live in an apartment or a house and have a car and go to a 9 to 5 is what I'm saying. Normal is probably not the right word, but I'm just saying like a regular everyday life, right? And we're thinking, how do I ever get there? How do I ever get to? And you're talking about like you were on a park bench, you were flat broke, but then you were able to build it back up. And I'm interested in how you were able to build it back up from there. And I know you talked a lot about spirituality just now in terms of like obviously finding that source of greatness. But then on the other side is, okay, great, you found that source. How do you build up to be able to get back to where you are today?
Well, spirituality, first of all, was the most important missing piece in my life because to have everything that I had, but I was still chasing something. I was still chasing that fast life. And still chasing, 7 figures isn't enough, 8 figures isn't enough. I want to make 9 figures. The reason was because I wasn't walking and living in my purpose. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that spiritual component that was missing, which, you're connecting and building a relationship with that higher power is what really started to make me realize that, oh shit, man, I don't have to do this by myself. I have someone I have something, someone, whatever you want to call it, that created me so I could co-create my life with that higher power. And when I started realizing that, that's when I started to be able to do the work from within and peel back the onion. Because, Mike, let me tell you, man, putting the drugs and alcohol down, that was the easy part. It was changing my mindset, really peeling back the onion to take stock and do that moral inventory of who I was as a person, what I had to change in order to be able to go to that next level. Because without making those changes from within, I could never be who I am here today on the outside. It would be impossible. So it was really about doing that work to learn what my character defects were, what I had to change, what was it that were my triggers that would bring me back to going back to where I was if I didn't control them, if I didn't learn how to control my emotions and learn how to really understand who I was from within and start to learn to really love myself and have self-care and create discipline in my life, create routines in my life. Because without putting all those components in place, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be in my grave already.
With limiting beliefs and blocks, and you talked a little bit about it before, and then just now you were just talking about your character defects, and I know you just kind of like touched on it in terms of recreating well, you didn't say affirmations, but mindset. What were some of the tools that you used in order to, one, identify those character defects, and then two, be able to improve upon them?
Self-awareness was huge, something that I really didn't focus on when I was getting high, and really learning who I was, learning what those character defects were, what was the reason they came up, right? And learning how to be aware of them, and learning really like how powerful that inner critic can be if you allow it to be. You know what I mean? And learning when to be so aware of it that when it comes up, to learn how to control that. I call it the gremlin, or many people call it the gremlin, right? But it's something that's a part of me, right? That if I allow it to get the best of me, it could take over. So not allowing that to get the best of me. Yeah. It was key for learning what those character defects were, because those character defects, they're always going to be there. It's never going to be something that those character defects get completely eliminated, because nobody's perfect. But I realized that I didn't have to be perfect. That as long as I progressed every day in my life, it was a win, right? So realizing that, all right, that's going to be there, but I don't have to let it control me, and learning new ways to live life. And put those routines in place. I mean, gratitude is probably the most powerful tool that I used to get to where I am, because without gratitude, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today. So having that gratitude, which started off as 1 to 3 minutes, right, a day, and it's grown to where today it lasts about an hour and a half sometimes, because I got so much to be grateful for. But learning how to be grateful of just the little things helped me overcome those character defects, right? Helped me overcome my ego. My ego was like this, man. It was fucking huge. And if I allow it to take control, it still could be this huge. But I got to give it up to that higher source. And I got to know that, you know what? I'm grateful for being alive today. I'm grateful for being the man that I am today. I'm grateful for learning from my past experiences and realizing how I could learn from my failure to turn it into success.
Yeah. The gremlin, I'm happy you brought up the gremlin, because it's interesting when you identify this source of like you said, inner critic, or the person that's talking to you, which is yourself, by the way. When you can identify it and then give it a new role, And like you just said, like using it, not just getting rid of it, because you're not going to get rid of it, but how do you give it a new role? And I realized that with myself is like, I mean, we all have that negative self-talk. And how can I now take, if I'm going to be speaking to myself this way, can I give myself some positive things to say? And, that's where I brought up the affirmations. And, I think in spirituality and religion, there's a lot of positive affirmations that we don't even realize it when we're praying. And, I grew up Catholic. So, there's a lot of prayers that you don't realize that you're saying positive affirmations. So if you could just take that inner critic and just give them a new assignment, give them a new script, give your inner critic a new script of like, start feeding yourself and your ego and your brain and your self-esteem and your mind. And like you say, your spirit, start feeding it some positive thoughts and some positive energy, and it's going to change. And I love how you said about that you understand that you're not going to be perfect, that it's going to take time. I know I have character defects, and it's funny. My wife and I joke about it. Like, I grew up. I was always very impatient. I was always kind of like ready to go. And what happens with that is, of course, when you're impatient in a relationship, that leads to arguments, right? That leads to like, why isn't this happening when I want it to happen, and all these other things. And sometimes, like even now, where I've gotten so much better at it, I'll lose my patience. And my wife's like, is that meditation working for you? Because I meditate pretty much every day. And I'm like, well, I mean, like, look at it. Like, look at how me losing my patience is me taking a step back now and breathing and like just being impatient, but breathing in the moment and like just needing silence, closing my eyes for a second. Whereas like, I mean, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it would be me shouting, it would be me throwing a fit, something that was not who I want to identify with today, right? So, I mean, it takes time, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to disappear. I still get impatient. I still get upset. I still get frustrated. It's just that I've learned how to manage it better. So I love that you brought that up. I do want to jump into your core values. I love that, when you speak about your core values here with me, you're not even just talking about core values of a business. Like when I think about my core values, I'm like, the core values of Den10, my insurance company. I'm like, we have these core values. But you're speaking about core values as a human being. You're like, me, Joe Rivera, these are my core values. And I love that. So I would love to just jump into that a little bit about what are your core values? How did you establish them and how they serve you today?
So, listen, my core, it's good you mentioned the fact of business core values and your personal core values, because without having the personal core values first, you can't create the business core values. The core values that you have in your personal lean over, start going over and overflowing into your business, right? So for me, my core values, my personal core values is going to be spirituality is number one, because without that, I'm not who I am today. Family core values is another one, is another huge core value of mine. Integrity, communication, resilience is another one, right? Because without resilience, where would I be today? And those are just five. The list could go on and on, right? But so here's the thing though, right? And then when I go talk about my business, right? Family's not going to be part of my core values of business, even though it kind of is, because I got to support my family, right? But look how it overflows: communication, integrity, discipline's another one, right? Enjoyment is another one. Enjoyment's another core value in personal life also, but it's a huge core value in my business, because if I'm not enjoying, if me and my employees aren't enjoying ourselves, then how am I going to have my clients to be able to enjoy themselves, right? So they all kind of come together when you really think about it, because your core values are a part of you. Your business is you. You're your brand. That's who we are in our business. A lot of people might get it misconstrued and feel like, oh, well, my brand is this. No, you're the brand of your business. You're the face of your business. You're building your business. It's about you, right? And you grow it from the bottom up, right? So that it's the same thing. So that's why it kind of overflows from your personal core values to your business core values. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, and when you speak about harmony, I mean, that's really how harmony happens, is that you're not living, we go back to that living that dual life and how that was overwhelming for you when you were living this one life of partying and one life of being with family. And it's overwhelming because you're trying to manage these two different people. And I think that happens so often here in business, is that we think we have to be two different people. I have to be the leader of this organization and I have to be this certain way over there. And then I have to be a family person over here. And when you, like you said, when you bring your core values together, then that's when you're living in harmony. I love that you bring enjoyment into the business. I think that that's really awesome. And we're probably going to talk a little bit more about some of the fun things you do there. But I'm very interested in resilience. Because I had a podcast, I think it was a week or two ago, and we were just talking about entrepreneurs, and one of the biggest reasons why so many entrepreneurs fail and businesses fail is because of lack of resilience, of fighting through the hard times. And you showed us an example of that in talking about your Series 7, which is, one of the hardest exams to take. It's a tricky exam more than it is even difficult in terms of learning the material. It's also trying to trick you in the material, which is a whole other talk. But you failed it twice. And forget about the whole addiction side of it and everything. We're talking about just you as a person. You failed it twice, and you were like, "No, I'm still going. I'm going to get this," and to be able to pass it. So you have this resilience built inside of you, embedded in you. And I'd love for you to share what that looks like and how you use that as a strength and part of your personal life and part of your business life today.
I believe it comes from having a strong vision, because without the vision and seeing what that's going to look like, then I have nothing to want to persevere for, right? That perseverance is built in me because I don't give up. I won't give up. I know that I could do anything I put my mind to, right? And I've proven it to myself over and over again. And listen, we all go through self-doubt, right? But again, that's the inner critic pop up. And to know that, no, I got this. I could do this. I know that I could do this. I'm a spiritual being living the human experience. Because, that those times in life that life throws curveballs and you're going to have ups and downs, it's always going to be there. But when you utilize the power of your vision and also learning from your past and realizing a time in your life where you had everything going against you, but you were able to overcome that. And you use that energy towards whatever it is you're doing now, right? So anytime I feel like, damn, man, I can't, this shit is just, it's not working out, because the word came, I've removed it from my vocabulary, right? So it's damn, I'm not able to do this. What's going on? I think of a time in life where I had things up against the wall and I was able to overcome that. And I utilize and I think about what about me made me be able to overcome that in that situation. And I grab that piece and I bring it towards the present to use it to catapult me into the future. Because we all go through ups and downs in life. Right. So being able to remember the times that you did have your back against the wall and it seemed like things weren't going to work out, but they did work out, pulling that piece of what made you be able to do that is going to help propel you to that next level. It's learning from the past.
Right. And tapping into that, I think it's, I've talked about this before in terms of, doing hard things and experiencing hard things is good for us, because then we could tap into it when we overcome them. And those hard things could be simple little things like, the one that came up recently in one of our episodes was just doing a cold plunge, right? Like people talk about cold plunges for, obviously for recovery from working out, but there's also the psychological benefit of doing it in that you're overcoming something that's hard. And you know what? If I could do this cold plunge right now, then maybe I could sit for another 10 minutes and do this email or go out and meet this person or whatever it is, because I can do something that's hard, tapping into that energy. I think that's That's another huge component of it. I can't help but notice while you're talking about resilience and while you're talking about overcoming these hard things, the shirt that you're wearing today, which is so cool. I love it. It's a huge stop sign for our listeners here. It's a huge stop sign on his chest, and it says "Stop embarrassing yourself." And it looks like your signature. Is it you, Joe Rivera? Is that your signature on there? Yeah, and he's signing it. So this is your saying. You're wearing it. You're at the office right now. So obviously everybody knows this is your thing. I'm interested in what that means to you and your team.
Yeah, so it's fun because anytime somebody does something like almost gives up on themselves or doesn't stay aligned with the core values in the office, it's come on, man, stop embarrassing yourself. It's just something I started it years ago when I would be on the phone pitching clients or trying to raise money or whatever. And one of the guys in the office would kind of like beat off the phone and not doing what he's supposed to do. Be like, yo, come on, man, stop embarrassing yourself, So now it's just become a big thing where I say it comes out naturally now, If you follow me on my social media, you'll definitely hear it a ton of times because it's in a lot of my content also.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, what it means to me and what you're saying and how you just shared it with everybody is that the person that you're saying that to has more potential, and by not attaining or by not even trying to reach that potential, they're embarrassing themselves because they're not tapping into it, and they're just giving up. And I love how you use that in there. Another thing that you focus on is health and exercise, and we were talking about boxing and exercise. And as an entrepreneur, this balance or this harmony that we try to live in, and you talked about, you're doing gratitude for over an hour and you're coaching people and you're working. And I know you have other businesses that you're also managing. How do you find time to exercise at a level that obviously you're very fit in person here, and keep that as a part of your daily or weekly routine?
Discipline and routine. And creating non-negotiables. My workout in the morning is a non-negotiable. The same thing as prayer, meditation. Same thing as moment of gratitude. My workout is non-negotiable. Number one, when I don't work out, because I don't work out 365 days a year. Nobody does, right? But I noticed that the days that I don't, like the days I take off, is a different type of energy. There's just a different aura, different energy. That's why usually my day off is on a day that I know I don't have to do anything, and that's the day I take off and I get my little cheat meal in, right? Because you gotta have that discipline in place, right? And create that routine. But without noticing, it comes to self-awareness and realizing that how I feel when I work out and the difference of how I feel when I don't, that's why I created it as a non-negotiable. So I make sure that that's part of my everyday morning routine.
Yeah, I have a very similar feeling about it, and I like that you bring up discipline, and we'll talk a little bit more about discipline. And because you mentioned, the other thing that you mentioned is that you have this system that you live by and that you use and you help your clients with. But yeah, for me, it's very similar to what you just said there, in that like I need to do exercise every single morning. I like to do it in the morning. I really don't like to do it in the afternoon. Sometimes I have to because of just the way that the day works out. And I'm like, all right, I still want to get my workout in because I feel it, like you said, it definitely feels a better energy. It's funny because jumping on this podcast today, you were like, how you feeling? I said, I'm feeling tired today. And I think that there's a balance that happens in our workouts because what I'm talking about in doing a daily workout, for me, what works well for me in terms of having that balance of energy to be able to work out and also manage my day is probably a 30-minute workout, maybe a 40-minute workout to where, all right, and it's intense. Like I like to go from one set to another set to another set to another set with no rest in between. This morning I did like an hour workout, and I think I went a little bit too far. And it was kind of like because I needed it mentally and I needed it physically. I was listening to a training while I was doing it. I listened to some coaches, not fitness coaches, but business and life coaches like yourself while I work out. So I needed that like break. but sometimes we go a little bit too far, which is interesting, because now I would like to ask you about discipline and how we form discipline in our lives. Because when we break out of our discipline of, like, for me, that 30 to 40 minute mark, which is like just perfect for me in terms of getting a good, solid, intense workout and still having high energy throughout my day. When we break that discipline and we add that extra 20 minutes, or same thing with our work day and all the other things, it bleeds into other things and removes energy from us. So how do we create, like you said, that system in order to manage our daily lives, in order to create a successful life like you've created for yourself?
You create it in small pieces, right? You don't go from never working out to I'm going to work out 6 days a week and I'm going to work out for 2 hours a day. I mean, it's not realistic, right? You're not going to do that. So what you do is you take little steps, and also you got to make sure that you celebrate your wins, right? So that you feel good about the win that you had. You feel good about the small stuff that you take, and you keep building up on it. You keep building up on it. And also, again, it goes back to creating the routine, right, of doing it. Not just doing it once and then not doing it again. When you do it and you get that small win, then you build on that. You add something else to it. You add something else to it. And you really start creating a routine of what it is you're looking to do, the goal that you have in mind, and you start staying disciplined towards it. And it's also about really realizing that you also have to prioritize, right? When you're creating that non-negotiable, you got to prioritize how important it is to you. How important is it to you that you're not only working out, right, but you're eating clean, your health is in order, you don't have high blood pressure, you don't have diabetes, you're not feeling like shit. You got to ask yourself, how important is this that I'm looking to do, whether it's working out or whether it's in your business? How important is it that I make 6 figures this year? How important is it that I make 7 figures this year? How important is it that I hire, 10 people to help me be able to take this business to the next level, right? Because it's all about prioritizing what it is you're trying to stay disciplined for. Because without prioritizing, you're not going to stay disciplined on it, because you're not going to realize how important it is to you. So in order to create that discipline, you got to find out how important, you got to create the routine, and you got to take small steps. And with those small steps, you got to celebrate your wins.
Celebrating your wins. I love that one, and it's, you mentioned it before about, like, even the small ones, right? Like I had asked one of my clients, I said, let's celebrate your wins. And he was kind of like drawing a blank, and he's just kind of sitting there, and I try to give him the space to talk, so I don't say anything. And I'm going, he's got to say something. And then so he says, the first thing he says, big win. It's a big one, right? He names his big win in his business. And then again, long pause, and he's thinking. And I'm saying, and then I'm like, let me help him out a little bit here. I said, you woke up this morning, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's a win. And I think we look at all of these small things that we do, these daily routines of waking up and getting out of bed and, brushing our teeth, and we just take them for granted. But those are all wins. And I think you could even speak to that experience right there, right? Like, you go back to addiction, getting out of bed as an addict or dealing with a hangover or whatever it is hard. It's a win to get out of bed and actually do something with your day, right?
Absolutely. The first thing I do when I get out of bed, as soon as my eyes open, not even when I get out of bed, as soon as my eyes open, I'm saying thank you.
Yeah.
As soon as the eyes open, saying thank you. Because that's the biggest win you're going to have in the day.
Right.
There's nothing bigger than the win of another day in life. What's bigger than that? Because guess what? Without that, nothing else exists. That's the biggest win we could have. And you hit it on the button, because it's the things that you think are so small end up being the biggest ones, like waking up in the morning. Right. People are like, oh, all right. Yeah, I woke up. But how big is that? There's people who can't even say that. How big is it that how important is the win that you're able to get yourself out of bed and use your legs and use your arms and be able to use your mouth? You know what I mean? Like there's people who can't do that. So again, it comes back to that gratitude, right? And I think that's a missing piece when it comes to creating all these things we're talking about: discipline, routine. It's got to start. Gratitude starts it all, man.
Yeah. And I heard recently that, when you're grateful, you can't be stressed. And I have actually experienced that where when I'm experiencing stress and going to gratitude, it's like, I'm no longer stressed, because once you start being grateful for being alive, for being, here on earth and wherever you are in your circumstances, once you start looking at the things to be grateful for, it's hard to be stressed. And we understand that there are some overwhelming situations that, that it is hard for this to happen in. But we're talking about regular day life of an entrepreneur, business leader, waking up to go do the daily grind. When you could find some gratitude in all of that, it does help relieve some stress. Some other things that you mentioned that I want to make sure we touch upon before we wrap up is finding clarity. At the time when you were dealing with your demons, you said you weren't clear on anything, and then soon you found clarity. And I know you have a new program coming out, which is probably already out as this episode, but you have this program of helping people with their visions and creating their vision and creating that clarity in their life. And I'd love for you to be able to share a little bit about that program, but also maybe just your own experience of finding clarity.
Yeah, so the clarity was like, without a vision, there is no clarity. My vision was blurry because I didn't have the clarity, right? So being clear on what I wanted was a huge key to success. I believe it's a huge key to success in general, because without clarity, you lack direction. Things become unmanageable. It's like a person without a plan. How are you going to build an action plan and create that action plan with no clarity on what you want to have, that you want to accomplish? So, man, clarity is so clear to success. I mean, I had to be clear on wanting to stay sober. I had to be clear on what I wanted to build. I remember when I first got sober, and I had to build another business. I built a pre-IPO marketing company that became another 7-figure business. But I had to be clear on what my goals were. I had to be clear on how many accounts I was going to open per day, how many contacts I was going to make per day, how much money I was going to raise per month, how much money I wanted to raise. I had to be clear on what those goals were in order to take that business to the next level. Without the clarity, those goals would have never been accomplished, right? And realizing how important, same thing with sobriety. If I wasn't clear on wanting to stay sober, on wanting to live a better life, on being clear on never wanting to go back to the way I used to live life, then I would have ended up going back to the way I lived life. But I was clear on my vision was clear. The goggles I had on at that time were clear. I wasn't wearing those foggy goggles anymore. And that was a huge change, a huge turning point for me. So, yeah, it's enormous. And I do have a vision workshop that I put together, and it's 3 of the 10 principles from the system that helped me, the reliable, repeatable, transformational system that helped me create the life that I would love. And in that vision workshop, I dive into, befriending your fear, also making decisions and how important that is. I mean, the most successful people in the world know how to make decisions in seconds. They don't overthink. Most successful people in the world, we're not out there sitting there second guessing and wondering if it's the right decision. No, you make the decision and you move forward, and move forward towards your dream, towards your vision. And the third piece is actually on having that vision in place to be able to really decide for what you want. Those are 3 of the 10 principles that get taught in the system that I'm talking about.
That's really cool. Obviously, you've had some great mentors in your life that have helped you getting sober, transitioning, creating different businesses, and you've mentioned some coaches. In all of these different mentors in your life, is there anybody that stands out and what they were able to help you with and guide you with?
I got so many people
or maybe a
were,
quality that stands out, maybe.
The quality that stands out is just learning how important mindset is, and how to reprogram our brains, and all my mentors, from Tony Robbins to Mary Morrissey, Bob Proctor, God bless his soul, they all talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
They all go into how important it is to reprogram the brain. And that's something that I had to do when I was out there doing drugs and getting high, right? Like I said, putting the drugs and alcohol down, that was the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
Reprogramming my brain is where the real work came in. And constantly listening to those mentors over and over and over again, because I believe repetition is the mother of skill.
Mm-hmm.
Is what helped me, learn to reprogram my brain and start to really see and uncover, that what was inside of me the whole time, the greatness that I could pull out. Because that's the whole purpose about Dream, right? Is to pull us away from the fear, pull us away from the self-doubt, pull us away from second guessing ourselves, and bring us towards our purpose. That's the whole purpose of what a dream really is. And really learning to reprogram the brain is what helped me realize that, to be able to get to that point in life.
Yeah.
That's
I love that you bring up the mindset again. You've talked about it a lot in this podcast, and it's so true. It's really up here, and doing things for ourselves in our mind, and realizing that, like, look, we have to be able to make ourselves happy first, because we're not going to be able to make anybody else happy. And we have to do that programming in our mind. And I love that you bring up these different mentors that some you may have met and have worked with closely, and some you may have never met, right? And I think that that's so important for our audience to hear, is that a mentor could be anybody. It doesn't have to just be the person that you shake hands with. It could be somebody that you listen to in a podcast or in a YouTube video that shares some wisdom with you, that influences you to do better, and that helps you succeed in what you're trying to accomplish. And I love that you bring up the fact of listening to it frequently and every day. I listen every single day to some of my mentors. Every single day I listen to them. And like I said, this morning I did a workout, and I extended it because I wanted to be part of this. I like to work out during these trainings. It kind of keeps me active and everything. But I wanted to stay longer because I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the message that they were sharing this morning. I needed it for myself because of wherever I was in my mind. And it helps me kind of like reestablish what I'm working for, what I'm working towards. So I love that you bring that up. On a lighter note here, going into a little bit of personal life, hobbies, things that you do that are fun. I know you have a family and kids and everything. So if you could share with us a little bit about, like, what are you doing today with the not necessarily today, but today in life with the family, some fun things that you guys do on a regular basis.
I love traveling. We love, just spending that quality time too. Even if it's not traveling, like, just being present with the family, and being able to do things together, like family gatherings, and being able to explore new things together, and have that experience. I mean, my kids are getting older. My son's 21, going to be 21 in August. My daughter's she just turned 19, and really being able to teach them how important growth is, and mindset is, and core values, and really being able to give it back to them. That's to me is the gift that keeps on giving. So that's the most fun I can have, is just being able to see my kids grow, man. I enjoy sports. We go to the games and things like that, but just really being able to just have that time, man. Any time I get with my family, whether it's my kids, my grandmother who's 87, God bless her soul, my aunts, my siblings, my brothers, my sister, all of it. The time I get to spend with them is priceless.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up experiences, because that's really the money in the bank there for the family and for the kids, and everybody is having experiences together and creating experiences, because sometimes we can't do it in person, but we could create experiences just by calling and having a conversation, learning about their day, learning about what's going on in their life, and listening and being that person on the other end that hears them and that sees what they're doing and appreciating them. Joe, how can people learn more about your programs, learn more about the work you do, perhaps work with you? How can they find you? What are some of your contact information? And of course, all of that will be in the show notes.
Yeah, so my website's withjoerivera.com. I'm on Instagram at with Joe Rivera, Facebook at with Joe Rivera, LinkedIn, same thing. Also, I wanted to give away a free gift to the audience, Mike.
Sure, please.
So I want to give away my 3 pillars of true wealth. And you could get that by texting Reforge, the word Reforge, REFORGE, to 646-495-9867. Again, that number's 646-495-9867. Text the word Reforge, and you get a free gift of my 3 pillars of wealth, what helped me get to where I am today.
That's awesome, Joe. Thanks so much for sharing that. And of course, if you do text that number, 646-495-9867, let them know you heard Joe on the podcast, on the Michael Esposito Show right here. That'd be pretty cool for Joe to see some results coming from working with me today and doing this interview. I want to thank you so much for coming on this show today, being so vulnerable, sharing your truth, sharing so much of what you do, even in your coaching program, that people pay a lot of money to work with you. I know that for sure. And you shared that with our audience today for free. And I really do appreciate that and the time that we spent together, getting to know each other and all the rest. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, man.
Awesome.
Everyone stay blessed.
Thank you for listening to the Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.